of people that has invited me to speak. Obviously, with COVID level 4, we're not doing any live talk, but going together with the virtual is working out perfectly. So last night I was with Outer Hour, the night before Lotus FM, the night before Bruce Whitfield. Last week was Daily Maverick and the publishers. So every day there's been something that I need to prepare for. So it's worked out pretty well.
No, that's great.
Yeah,
okay,
congratulations.
Malcolm, before you start, just a quick question.
Yeah.
Is it going to be a question and answer, or am I just going to talk?
You're going to talk, and then we're going to put you on the spot.
Okay.
There's going to be a question and answer as well.
Okay, please tell Paul. I sent my write-up because she asked, so I did email to yourself and to her, please. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks. Yeah.
Okay, guys, we are going to get started. Welcome to this morning's boardwalk. I'm your stand-in for today. Colleen's got Gender Mainstreaming Awards judging for the whole day. So this month we're welcoming in Cynthia Stimpel. Cynthia is a whistleblower extraordinaire. Many of you would have seen her on the Zondo Commission. Cynthia is also a best-selling author. At least she will be a best-selling author if you go out and buy a book. So she's just written a book about her adventures, and it is an adventure. Hijackers on board. So to talk about her experiences and her book, Cynthia, over to you. And as Cynthia did say, so we do have a bit of a bio. So if anybody wants that, we can give you that. So Cynthia, over to you.
Thank you very much, Malcolm, and thank you to Business Engage for hosting me today. And thank you to all who joined this morning. I'm so happy that you could. And yes, I'm look forward to telling you about Hijackers on board. So basically why the story started and where we've come from is that I worked for SAA, and it was through SAA that I had whistleblown. To give you a bit of my background is that I come from a large family who was very focused on ethics. My dad, my mom, and how we grew up and what they stipulated in our values and our belief system. I have quite a large family of 10, and one passed away as a baby, so 9 siblings. Throughout the years, I'd obviously finished matric, quite a good pass, but could not start university at the time because of our ministerial consent, and ended up working in the bank. So the bulk of my career has been in banking. I started in the retail commercial banking, then went into merchant banking, and then went into corporate finance. And that's how I ended up in a treasury environment. With the treasury environment is when I started at SAA, because they were looking for people who could understand how treasury worked, and obviously SAA needed its own treasury, having broken away from the Transnet. To give an overview what my responsibilities were at the time was that I was first the head of financial risk management, so looking at all the risks associated with our borrowing, with our hedging plan, and anything else that could impact the finance of SAA, which also included the leases of our aircraft. This led to me working there for roughly 8 years. On the 9th year, 2015, the then group treasurer resigned, and he went over to Transnet by the name of, his name was Pitolo Ramasibudi, and I deputized, was acting group treasurer. Over the past 8 years, I was also acting whenever group treasurers resigned, or if they were going to on leave, etc., and I would then be taking that position. So it was no new process for me to act in that first year. And when they opened applications for us to apply, I applied and I did get the job. Come 2016 is when I recommended together with my team that we consolidate SA's debt. Reason being that SA was borrowing 1 billion at a time over a short period of time for 1 year, resulting in very high interest paid. So your interest paid for was over 1.2 billion alone, not even touching capital repayment. And we made this recommendation to our board, to National Treasury, who was the shareholder of SAA, which was approved in at board and National Treasury level. When we came to consolidating the debt is when board interfered. Now, you know, being directors, or you're still aspiring to be director of an organization, you know that you have to have oversight for the organization. There's no way that you can get involved from an operational perspective and then still have oversight, because then you're compromising your fiduciary duties. And here our board actually put a board resolution forward stating that they want to be involved in giving suppliers for SAA to seek funding. And at the same time, they want to be involved in the RFP process. So that was the first trigger, and red flags and areas that were of concern to me. But going forward, my then boss was on his way out and resigning, Wolf Meyer. He was the current CFO, and he said that is the exact reason why he's resigning, because there's just too much interference at board level. He resigned, and a new person came in, Promesa. We then put the deal. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, but suddenly you've got an echo.
I'm not sure why. Can you hear me now? Cool.
That's better.
Thank you. And we proceeded with getting this RFP out. And still, the clients that came out was clients that were not banks, and that was unusual, because whenever we sought funding, you would only get your banks being able to provide funding, and at the same time they had the capacity, and they were credit rated, which was part of our policy in our financial risk management policy, that we had to deal with credit rated organizations. Anyway, in a nutshell, was that the board then took a different route. They went via the procurement department, whereby they first sought a transaction advisor, and the transaction advisor's mandate was basically to review our loan book, look at it and see whether we had any expensive loans, etc. And we're doing that anyway, because we as Treasury have to consistently look at our loans, consistently negotiate with the banks for better rates. And we're doing that on an ongoing basis as the loans mature and we negotiate for new loans. The same with the leases of the aircraft is that we have a fleet department who look at the leases, and they're negotiating with the aircraft lessors on these aircraft leases. But this mandate suddenly was review loan book, review the aircraft leases, and see if we can restructure the balance sheet. And the restructure the balance sheet is it falls in the ambit of our financial accounting department, together with internal and external auditors. This new transaction advisor won the contract at a price of a fee rather of 2.68 million, so rather small, and their name was BNP Capital. They won this contract and they were supposed to review it. I hadn't even seen the client. They hadn't come to meet with us or anything. They were liaising directly with the CFO, Pumeza Nahansi. Thereafter, 2 months pass, and suddenly we are told that this new transaction advisor, they want to change the scope of this transaction advisor to source funding for SAA. Now, bear in mind, this client has done other work but never sourced funding for clients. And they were going to do the work that our Treasury department does. We source the funding, and we've been doing it for SAA since SAA first started borrowing from 2007. With this, a meeting was called by the Financial Risk Committee, which is myself. I called that meeting and objected to the fact that why are we going to change the source, change the mandate to source funding, and the the answer from the CFO was, well, we already have the client. We're short of time. We're under pressure to get funding for SAA, and we need to do this. And board has already approved the upfront that they can change the scope. And we said, but there's nothing in writing. It hasn't gone through the process. And they said, yes, let's do it. So basically, what transpired is that I was called in on the 6th of May to sign this document, which says that BNP Capital is the chosen supplier to source funding for SAA, and the success fee on that document was 300 million. Now, I was working very hard to cut down any costs for SAA, and I've put down in my balance scorecard to save SAA 300 million. And here, this document was going to wipe out that saving that I've been working towards. And so I again said, I cannot sign this document. Firstly, we're going it through the wrong process. Secondly, is that there's no way I'm going to sign something that wipes out the savings I'm trying to gain for SAA. And thirdly, this client, I don't even know what their capacity is because we source funding from the banks. I then went away on, and I was about to leave and embark on a pilgrimage, which I had booked already the year before as a gift from my husband. And while I was away, I got this message from my colleague saying that he signed it. The issue here was that I expected him, and I had instructed him not to sign anything, to hold back anything that comes across, because he was acting as my deputy treasurer while I was away for the week, and that we will deal with it upon my return. I couldn't cancel my leave at the time because it was booked already a year ago and paid for. And I did tell this to the CFO, and she knew well. But she still gave it to the deputy and forced him to sign it, which he did. So by notifying me via WhatsApp, I then proceeded to write a WhatsApp message to National Treasury saying to them, this is of great concern to me. Please, this has happened. I'm not in the office, but I'm writing it now to raise the concern of what's happening at SAA there. By the time I got back, I thought they would have sorted it out, but nothing happened. And obviously this document, which is to the bid adjudication committee, which then they approved it, and subsequently it went to board, and the board approved it by round robin. And that again was another red flag. Why would board approve something that cost SAA so much and not sit down and interrogate it and question it? And I bring it back again to you as directors. When you are challenged with anything that is of concern to you, please interrogate. Do not allow yourself to be bullied by fellow board members, and also do not allow yourself to go to board meetings without being prepared. So if you look at a document that's come across for you to approve via your email, the cost, they've changed the cost then down to 225 million. It's a $250 million. So being a service at 225 plus VAT made it 256 million. At the time, VAT was 14%. And so as a board director, would you approve that? I'm just putting it out there for you to consider it. And this is the challenges we face in our country, is that too many things are being slid across the board table, not being interrogated, questioned enough, not being considered, and not independent thinking is being applied. And I know with Business Engage and them giving the board walk and the directors discussions and courses, is that it's to allow each one of us to start thinking, to have that independent thinking. So that was my main concern. And then I immediately again put all evidence together, because now I was in the office, and I took it to, I called National Treasury and I said, I know I sent you the WhatsApp, but now I have the evidence to back it up. Please, can we meet? And they sent me a colleague who came over and collected all the information, which I had put onto a flash disk at the time. I was still concerned. That was in June. Nothing happened by mid-June, and it was already towards the the third week in June, still nothing happened. I then contacted 2 of our executive managers, which I had previously contacted about my concerns. And I said to them again, I've contacted National Treasury, nothing's happening. What do I do now? And they then suggested, obviously, Public Protector, Corruption Watch, and Outer. So I did 4 flash discs with all the evidence. I wrote to the Public Protector via email first to see if they could meet with me. I got no reply. I also wrote to Corruption Watch. They did come back to me, Dave Lewis himself, and apologized, saying they just lost my email in the bigger scheme of things. There was just too many, and he didn't realize then, because they filter out certain things. And it was Outer who actually set up the meeting within a couple of days of me contacting them, and they were the ones then blew it out and took it out to the media and got me the lawyers of Weber Wenzel, whereby I could easily just work with them and interdict the deal. So out of this deal, we actually managed to stop it. We interdicted. We had to, SAA was not allowed to sign the final agreement with the client, and hence couldn't pay the client this fee. And that's how the book comes about, in that writing about how I managed to get them not to further exacerbate the already cash flow that SAA was experiencing and just couldn't operate effectively. But what's not expected, and I didn't at the time because I was just so naive, thinking that, yeah, I've told everybody who's responsible to act on this. The Protected Disclosures Act says you got to report it to various people. You got to make sure there's a lawyer. You got to make sure that there's no victimization in it or deliberate areas where you're trying to be sort of spiteful, etc. in it. And there was none. I had all the tick boxes, but still I was suspended. And subsequently, through long court cases, through the disciplinary hearing, which never happened, CCMA, which never happened, and finally taking early retirement at the age of just 6 months short of being 60, that's how we separated from SAA. Yeah, and this resulted in a couple of things. So is that I won't talk about the trauma just yet, but it did result in some good things, in that the very CEO, acting then Phumeza Nahansi, the very the CEO and CFO Musa Twane, were both dismissed. The irony of the situation was, when SAA charged me, their charges were that I didn't whistleblow. And yet it was my evidence and my case that got the 2 of them suspended from SAA, because the new board of SAA used my evidence for that. And it was my evidence that also went to the Zondo Commission. And it was my evidence that also got Dudu Myeni declared as a delinquent director. So that's the good side of it. The downside, though, is being a whistleblower. Nothing prepares you for being a whistleblower. No matter what the rules say, no matter what the acts say, like the Protected Disclosures Act, it didn't protect me, and it didn't protect any of the other whistleblowers who I've been in contact with. So, and I only found out recently that the Protected Disclosures Act in South Africa was only written to comply with the United Nations directives. And so I'm even more disturbed about it when I found that out recently. But I'm working with some lawyers where we can now develop this Protected Disclosures Act to truly and effectively protect whistleblowers. So where did this leave me? Is that, yes, after whistleblowing, it's as if someone's pulled the carpet from you. You've fallen flat on your face, you've been beaten up or kicked or bruised and battered, and you ask yourself, where to from here? What career do I have now from here? I was again naive, thinking, you know what, I have an MBA, I've got very good experience, I have conducted myself in the highest ethical manner through all the banks I've worked for, SAA, DBSA. And I applied firstly to all the banks, and not a single bank responded. And then I thought, you know what, maybe it's the age, maybe they don't have capacity. Let me try universities, because universities normally take a longer age group. And then I hadn't even turned 60 yet. I was still 59. And I applied to the universities, UJ, Gibbs, Wits Business School, Wits Normal University, and also received nothing. And then I thought, you know what, let me go and study for the Institute of Directors, which in fact was part of my business plan, my plan, that I wanted to get a qualification to be on boards, because this was the discerning part. I found that our board at SAA were willy-nilly authorizing transactions that they knew was not kosher, that didn't follow procedures, and they were part of that process. And I only found out the extent of it listening to Zondo Commission, because for various other parts of SAA, like the SAA Technical Division, which I don't work with at all, but they came to give evidence there at SAA and at the Zondo Commission, and you realize the extent of the corruption and how bad decisions are made for greed or whatever else people have in mind for their own personal benefit and not for the best interest of the organization. And so, yes, that leaves us to, where do we go forward? Where do I go forward? Where do whistleblowers go forward? And what do we do as South Africa going forward if we want to combat corruption? What I've undertaken, firstly, from my own personal perspective, is that I needed to heal myself. I needed to find a way of that I don't hate and that I don't feel this, that I've been done in and that I've been shortchanged. And so I went on a long walk, did another Camino, this time for 6 weeks, starting in Lisbon right up into northern Spain, and just to think, to cry, to write, to journal, and to clear my mind. And coming back, I think that's what gave me the strength to continue what I'm doing now, is that I've done a few things. I've looked at what I'm passionate about, what I love, and I love yoga, always did, and it kept me healthy, it kept me fit. The meditation part kept my mind clear. And with that, I was able to come through the whole process with the saga of SAA. And so I decided to study for it. And today I have 2 qualifications, one to teach children yoga and the other to teach adults. And I've used it quite extensively until COVID hit us. And so I haven't taught much now except private lessons. But that has kept me sane, and because it's something I love, has been my passion, and I could do it quite easily. The other was obviously to study and become certified director. Today I'm a board member of 3 boards. The one is Amnesty International, South Africa. I'm very proud to be part of them because they're fighting for human rights. And if you just read the media, especially of late with the riots happening last week, or the water shortages in previous municipalities, or anything that's a basic human right, we are constantly challenging government on this. And I think that fits me best as what I'm passionate about and what I can add value to. And then I'm a board member of Healthy News, and the other one is Johannesburg Children's Home, where I initially started just teaching those children yoga, and later on helped them set up a charity shop, and now I'm part of their board. So that's evolved very nicely for me. But what I've started in the recent, since last year, was set up a company called Citizens of Conscience. We're not there completely yet because we're still in our growing stages and trying to find our way. But to give you in a nutshell what my vision is about it, is that it's to help whistleblowers in a holistic way, to help them where for the first major issues that when you want to whistleblow is you're challenged with, I know if I do this, it is the right thing, but I am going to lose my job, and I have no fallback on my finances, and I cannot afford a lawyer. So that's your first point. And with that is looking for lawyers who would do pro bono work for whistleblowers. The second part is obviously looking at the health, the mental health, the physical health, the trauma you're facing. And so finding social workers, psychoanalysts, psychologists, psychiatrists. And so far over the time, I've managed to be in touch with quite a few people, and they've actually volunteered their services. So that is really great. On the lawyer side, I'm working with a group of lawyers now. Since 2019, the lawyers I spoke to then were very reluctant to help on a pro bono basis. And suddenly, I think after COVID, this year, I've had lawyers wanting to assist, and that for me is a great beginning for us now to take it forward. Then the other part is looking at finance for whistleblowers. That is still work in progress. I've done some extensive research, and I have put a paper together and sent that to a few companies. I haven't received any response, but I think because it was done in May this year, and we're going through the process, all the issues we're facing currently in our country. But what I intend doing after COVID level 4 or 3 is reduced and we can set up formal meetings, I would probably try to meet and see if there's a way we could start doing extensive fundraising. And that brings us back to where are we as South Africans? So that's my story of where I am. But as South Africans, I'd just like to bring in a short conclusion that we've all felt the repercussions of what happened last week with the riots across our country in KwaZulu-Natal and in Gauteng, where I'm residing. And at points, I was really feeling so devastated. Sometimes when I looked at certain destruction, it really brought tears to my eyes to see how can we get to this point where we can really destroy infrastructure and not for 1 minute consider our neighbor or our family or the people it's going to affect. And I think we all had similar thoughts, and I'm sure whatever's in your mind, you're feeling exactly what I felt. And I'm just calling on all of you now as South Africans, can we stand together? Because it's what we really need. We cannot run away to another country and leave the problems behind us, because the problems are still going to continue, and it takes 1 or 2 people to stand up. And I know it's hard. But if we stand all together, just imagine the strength. Just imagine what we can achieve. And that's what I want to leave you with, that we as South Africans are resilient. We've come through centuries of abuse and centuries of changing legislation, and we've overcome it. That's where we are now. And we need to just stand together, embrace that resilience that we are who we are, and then work towards and change South Africa for the good and the way we want it. Thank you.
Cynthia, thank you very, very much for that. I've always found it a very inspiring story, and I've also found it absolutely frightening, the lack of support that whistleblowers get from areas where you should have the support, from individuals, from institutions, from the law, from legislation itself. That's the first time I've heard you say about the legislation just being put there because of the United Nations. It's quite frightening that you would think. To me, I would expect that society organisations would be crawling all over you to get people like you to come and work for them, to work with them. And that just doesn't seem to be the case. It seems to be exactly the opposite, that people shy away from whistleblowers for whatever reason, which then makes you wonder how sincere people are about doing things the right way, or whether they're just purely more concerned about the profit motives. So Cynthia, thank you very, very much for that. Ladies and gentlemen, we're now going to open it up for questions to Cynthia. You must have questions for her. So let's just see, anybody just put your hand up. Yes, Patrice, I see you. Patrice?
Yep. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you, Cynthia. That is really most inspiring. And I would like to, well, first, very much support what Malcolm exactly said. And that leads me to ask you, with your permission, a rather personal question. Is that in spite of all the legal protection and all the theory, being a whistleblower requires an incredible amount of courage. And you must have, in your journey, you must have encountered a moment where you were just in deep despair. Well, what have I done? And the question I would like to ask you, and I apologize if it's inappropriate, just send me away, but it'll certainly, I'm sure your answer will help us. What made you to keep going?
Thank you, Patrice. Yeah, so when I was first faced with the challenge, right, is I did ask my colleagues, all of them, I said, you know what, if we all stand together, we either write a memo or we call a meeting to try and stop the transaction. I was told that we need our jobs, you see. And for me I said, then I cannot call myself a group treasurer if I don't stand up to something that I can see is wrong. And I also stated that to my family, that I'm not worth my salt. If I say I want the salary and the title, but I can't go with the responsibility and the consequences. With my colleagues, I had said to them that if we don't stand up, SAA would fail. I said, this is the primary goal of our responsibilities, is to protect the organization. So you asking what made me go on, as in with the whistleblowing, knowing the responsibility and knowing the impact. I was in discussions with family. We knew that if I spoke out, I would lose my job. At that time, I was still naive in that saying, yes, but I'm doing all the right things. I'm ticking off the right boxes and I'm following the right process and I am protecting the organization. So I didn't think at the time, yes, I was nervous inside thinking, yes, there is the chance that I could lose my job, but I didn't think it would be so grave. So when I did that, within 2 days, I lost my job. In fact, a couple of days, I disclosed the full evidence on the 1st. By the 5th, I was of July, I was suspended. You asked the question, how did I feel? Yes, I did. And I describe it in the book. I did feel like I should have kept quiet. I should have remained under the radar screen. I shouldn't have said anything, you know, and then the thoughts go around that I start feeling ashamed. I'm feeling, Cynthia, you're in such a senior position. Maybe you should have just kept quiet. You should have just stayed where you were and given the responsibility for someone else to do it. You know, so those thoughts does go through someone's mind, and it did through mine. I actually went through a loop. I kept asking myself the same questions and came with the same answer. And then the next night, the same and the same, until you come with the conclusion that, you know what, you did do the right thing. You acted on your conscience. You can put your head on the pillow and feel, you know what, despite everything that's happening around you, I feel that I've done the right thing now. So so that gave me the courage to go on. Also knowing that so many other corruption deals were coming out in the media at the time. I think 2015, 2016, the media was prolific around the type of corruption happening, especially around the Guptas, Transnet, Eskom, and state-owned entities. And I just felt that if I walked away, someone's going to ask that question, who was there that could have stopped it, you know? And I felt I am in a position to do it. And that's what made me go ahead and do it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cynthia, and good for you. Well done.
Thanks, Patrice.
Thank you, Cynthia. And I think we've also got to be honest as well. Not only could you have lost your job, you could have lost your life as well. Let's be quite honest about that. So, yeah, bravery like anything. Adele, saw your hand up next. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Cynthia. Again, I think you've partly answered my question, because I think I know what your answer is. You know, what would you do it again? And I'm guessing you would do it again. But looking back, would you have done it differently, knowing what you know now? I just find it absolutely shocking that you had hardly any protection, any support. And it just, for me, I found it very upsetting knowing that evil triumphs when good men do nothing. And thankfully, you did a good thing. But there are so many people that would do nothing for fear. Yeah. Would you do things differently, knowing what you know now? Thank you.
Cynthia, did you hear the question? Cynthia, are you there?
My internet's going, Michael. It's going. It's unable to connect to me. Are you there?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thanks. I couldn't finish or couldn't hear the end of Adele's talk, but I'm understanding when the initial part that it was more around that there was no support, etc. Adele, yes, there isn't, and right now I'm in touch with many whistleblowers because I started this whistleblowing group and just to find support to them, and they've all been through the same. There is no support. Secondly, our lawyers that we get are more geared to respond to the Labour Relations Act. And this is what our companies do. When your company charges you, they go via Labour Relations Act and they use whatever else is in the book to get you out of the organization. And that is pure retaliation and pure victimization. And so your lawyer has to fight what the charges that's given to you, and only then they look at the Protected Disclosures Act. So it's really a difficult situation. From a support perspective, just for societies, civil societies, organizations, corporate companies, it's also, I think the concept of whistleblowing is not an easy concept to take, because in the past, especially in the apartheid years, in the research I've been doing, is that people were rather considered as informers if you wanted to talk about something else. So they would be informed upon, and those informers got paid for information. So it was done sort of a skull and duggery thing behind the scenes. It was never an honest, open process where you are doing it because you are loyal to an organization and that you want to save the organization. There are stories and not only here in South Africa, but also all over the world, Switzerland, Germany, the UK, the US, Ukraine even, that whistleblowers can see something happening in their organizations, they speak out about it, and they immediately get penalized. They immediately get fired or pushed aside, retaliated against. So it is difficult. What's transpired, though, over the years is that there's a lot of whistleblowing groups, support groups that have come up. So there's the Whistleblower News. They're a group that just report any whistleblowing news now. There's whistleblowing networks to see how they can help people. Most of them are in the States at present, so they don't support South Africans. There is the PLAF, which is a French word, PPLAAF, protect, but in English it would be Protection Against for Whistleblowers in Africa. And they've supported two whistleblowers like Bianca Goodson and Masilo Matepo, and they also provided a lawyer for Athol Williams at his Zondo Commission testimony. So there's more and more companies coming out to assist whistleblowers, and I think the more we just spread the word, try and work with civil societies, we're going to enlist the help of others. But yes, at the time for me, no, there wasn't any. Thanks. If I didn't answer your question, please put it in the chat. I could read it, or if Malcolm can ask. It just missed at the time. I lost the last part. Thank you.
Yeah, Cynthia, the second part of the question was, would you do it again? Okay.
Adele, yes, I would. Because that is my makeup. It's my belief system. It's how I grew up. It's just being a person of integrity. And I feel if we all start being that, just being a person of integrity, having the highest ethical conduct or work ethic in your job, no matter what it is, whether you're sweeping the street, you do it to the best of your ability, whether you are serving a restaurant as a waiter, or whether you a CEO of your company, just conduct yourself in the best way. Then we wouldn't be a Mark Jooste of a Steinhoff, or we wouldn't be a Dudu Myeni of a SAA, because we didn't conduct ourselves in the best ethical manner. So yes, my answer is I would do it again. I think I heard the other one, would you do it differently? I think yes, I would do it differently with hindsight, because the more I learn about all the impact of the whistleblowers and the legislation surrounding us, and the lack of legislation and the lack of support, what I'd like to do now is build that support so that future whistleblowers do not go through what we've done before. Thank you.
Okay, Cynthia. Ria, I see your hand is back up.
Yes, thank you very much. And thank you, Cynthia, for...
Anything else? Was that fine?
Yeah, no, that was great. Thank you, Cynthia. Go ahead, Ria.
Can you hear me, Malcolm?
Yes, we can. Have you lost us again?
Cynthia?
Ria, I think, just hold on a second. I think
right.
She's lost us again.
All right, sure.
I think she's having problems with
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you again now.
Yes.
Okay, Ria, carry on.
Okay, perfect. Thanks a lot, Cynthia, for your story. Very inspiring. The question that I wanted to ask was around whistleblowing policies in companies as they are right now, and I'm sure majority of us have those processes. But what changes would you make, or rather improvements would you make to whistleblowing processes, policies actually, to be more frank? Because I think you mentioned that there is that downside of whistleblowing where your protection, will not be 100%. So I guess my question is, what can they do to ensure that protection, or are there things that are just inevitable, that you must just know that if you're going to whistleblow, you will not be protected and it ends just there? Thanks.
Thank you very much. That's exactly what we don't want, Pam. So the current whistleblower policies that are in your organization, we've had exactly the same, and that is and it was run by Deloitte, our whistleblowing policy, and I read it, and I actually called Deloitte and I told them I do not want to go through the process via the internet, via our website. Can I come separately and give you my evidence? And they said no, I have to go through that. I was told by an executive not to go that route because the previous person who whistleblew through that route was immediately suspended the following day. And how does that whistleblowing policy work within your organization? Please go and do the research. In our organization, it went straight to internal audit, and the process is that internal audit takes it to board. Now, if the very people are your board or your CEO or your CFO, they get first sight of it. So there isn't chance for an independent party to interrogate it. What I would like to see for the future is that it should be, all whistleblowing should be outside the organization. And that's where I want to bring in where the organizations need to fund it. Because right now they're funding a Deloitte, a Ernst & Young or KPMG to write their whistleblowing policies. It's on the company's website. And when you whistleblow, they get it. And all they do is they don't interrogate it. They pass it back to the organization. Obviously, they'll filter to see what looks real, because some people could be acting not in the best interest and maybe want to because they're angry with their colleague for getting a promotion, they will write some funny stuff. So they try and filter that out and then ask people to investigate. But it goes back to the organization. So who in the organization is not independent or clear in their thinking of how to investigate a CEO? They would immediately feel afraid or threatened or compromised, and hence that type of investigation may never happen. And true to that, many have said that the investigations were thrown out. So my recommendation would be for the future is that we have a separate whistleblowing organization. And there are already, there's a company out in Durban called the Whistleblowers. And they take hundreds of calls daily. They're there, and it's good to do that. And then for them to do the investigation and then pass it through a mechanism in the organization. There's also quite a lot more research we need to do, because I personally feel that your internal whistleblowing system is not effective, and that needs to be done away with. Your other part of your question was, do we just accept it and continue? No, we cannot accept it, because we see the demise of a career, of a person, of a livelihood, of families when that person whistleblows. And I can give you a point in context. Let's take Bianca Goodson, who whistleblew against Trillion. Her story managed to recoup the funds that McKinsey's and Trillion had to pay back the funds to Eskom. And that was a huge amount of money. I think it was already $1 billion that they had to repay or more. But what was her benefit? She's lost everything in her job, that it's impacted her family, it's impacted her livelihood, it's impacted her that she ended up in a divorce and almost losing her daughter. So can you see, for us to go forward, we need to then have a way that we protect all whistleblowers, that you do not suffer any detriment, not only occupational detriment, but no detriment to your life, to your livelihood, to your family, to your health, to your mental state, nothing. And I know it's work in progress, but again, with people of skills and anyone who wants to volunteer, we can get there. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. Candice, I see your hand up next, and then Penny will go to you, but Candice first.
Thanks, Malcolm. Cynthia, I think very inspiring talk. What I was thinking around is, what was the thought processes when you were evaluating the residual impact of whistleblowing? And when I talk about the residual impact, not just on you as an individual and the stress and the strain that you would need to go through the process, but the residual impact on people that didn't sign up to be the group treasurer with you, your family, your friends, people in your personal circle that counted on you for support. And what was that thinking process that eventually led you to still leap forward and make the decision? Because I think, in these instances, we never, especially as women as well, we don't operate as lone rangers independent to ourselves. We're part of a network of people, either children, family, extended families, communities that relies on us for
exactly
support, right?
And that's exactly the residual impact.
So maybe you can talk us through your own personal experience. within your own personal network, within your own family?
Thank you for the question, Candice. And that's really excellent because we always overlook the impact on our families and our relationships and our friends. In my case is that because from December already, when that first board resolution was, I knew it was irregular. I walked around with it in my handbag and every time looked at it and thinking, who can I speak to? And on the day Nene got fired, which was the 9th of December 2015, was also my younger daughter's birthday. And we were having dinner and it was my eldest daughter who picked up on the phone saying, Mom, did you hear that Nene was fired? You know, that day I hauled out this board resolution and I said to my family, this is exactly the problem that's going on because they expect us to do these. This is, you know, this board resolution is expecting me and my colleagues to do the wrong thing. And then you end up being fired like Nene. So that already was my catalyst that there's no way I can allow this to happen. So we had extensive discussions around the dinner table that evening about, firstly, the impact of Nene being fired and in our country. And then the other was about this board resolution that I was walking around with. And over the next ensuing months, before I formally whistleblew, I had constant discussions with my family, with my husband. The initial fear was, don't do it. You know, why don't you resign? You know, the result would be that you could lose your job. And but I had the discussions with my husband, with my children, with my siblings even, because for them, I knew it would impact them. I didn't have it with friends more because they're not financially dependent on you, or they would not, I won't say dependent, that you don't go to them for financial maybe some do, but I didn't, you know, so not so much discussed with friends, although when I met them, I always told them I had these concerns. But with the family, the strong thing that came out with my family closer to the time, by May, I then I got the family again together to say, this time I'm formally doing it. I am going to whistleblow. I'm going to put it in writing. I'm going to follow all the processes and the procedures that allow for whistleblowing. And even up to that point, there was still one or two of my family members that said, you sure you want to do it? Can you resign and just walk away? And I said, actually, I can't, because I have to do this. It's the only way to stop it from going forward. And their answer to me was, you have our support. If whatever lawyers you need, we will get you the best lawyers, we will dig into our savings, and we will see how we can help you. So my side was, I would say that gave me the courage to know that I'm still on the path of doing the right thing. I came out the better, maybe because I was much older. I had less impact from a financial perspective because I was closer to retirement. When all this happened, I could then pay off my house and really live as a minimalist, where I don't have too much debt and I don't have too much commitments in other things. But let's take it out of my context and take it to a young whistleblower who is 30 or 40, who has a new home. They've just committed themselves to a bond. They have cars, they have young children that they still need to put through school. How do they cope? How will they be able to meet their financial obligations? So it's actually worse. And it does have an impact, a huge impact on the family, because especially if you are the breadwinner in that family, and you lose your job, what happens? The majority of whistleblowers that went through this, it has severe, severe impact. They have had broken relationships. They have gone through divorce. They have suffered mentally, that they have ended up with psychiatric help. And so it's unending. And yes, I have no solution to say, go ahead and do it. The most I can say at this point is that I've offered my help. I've offered it from a perspective that I can listen and find people that can help them, and build up networks that can help future whistleblowers. Because I believe strongly that the only way we're going to save our country to get to a more ethical level is to support one another, to support whistleblowers and find the right institutions or civil societies and the right type of lawyers willing to fight your case to the nth degree so you can win, and to fight for you, and to find people who are willing to sponsor and fund you while you're going through this process and you are sort of just carried financially and not struggling with an added debt situation versus the challenge of trying to clear your name at an organization. So yes, it's broad and it's holistic, and the only way is if we all work together to create this environment to protect whistleblowers. Thank you, and I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Cynthia. Penny did have a question, but she seems to have dropped off. Penny, are you still here? No, Penny's dropped off. Any other questions for Cynthia or comments? I mean, this is such a fascinating subject. It's such an important subject. Yes, Patrice, another question. Carry on.
Yes, sorry, me again. There's nobody else wants to ask a question. Actually, I would like more to make a comment. Cynthia, and my comment is directed towards large companies and headhunters. I found absolutely shocking that when you needed a job, nobody was there to even talk to you. Here there was somebody capable who has guts, and you don't even want to talk. It's absolutely shocking. And I work quite a lot with people who have been made redundant. And the phenomenon is the same. When you have a job, it's easy to get another one. When you need one, you are motivated to get one. Nobody wants to talk to you. So sorry, it's not really a question, but I think us as a society, we must really look at ourselves. That's not a good behavior. That's all I have to say about that. Thanks for the opportunity.
No, thank you, Patrice. It is exactly that. I think because there's a bad name, it's a stigma associated with whistleblowers. And I actually mentioned that in my book. For those of you, please buy my book. In there is that we need to eradicate that stigma associated with whistleblowers, because it's perceived that you are this impimpi or this person who stepped out of line to go against your company. But every whistleblower who spoke out was more because they were the most loyal to the organization. They could see things were going wrong, and they had the strong feeling within themselves to do something about it, even if it meant that they lose their jobs. So yes, I think what we'd like to see is that more organizations, especially in the ethics departments or on their boards or in the compliance divisions, that they start hiring whistleblowers in that area. Just imagine if they had those type of people in those organizations, they would pick up fraud sooner. So companies that have I'll mention EOH. EOH is a computer company, and they had a whistleblower who raised the issues in the organization, which transpired in them changing their board entirely and the executive manager from CEO, CFO. And now the new CEO is Stefan van Coller. He's actually gone further by charging the previous CEO for allowing all the shenanigans to happen in his organization. And this is a first. So it's good to see that they are trying to do something. And they also have approached us as whistleblowers. They've asked us to send our CVs and to see if they can engage with us and to help. So they're already making a stand. They're not just putting their money, just speaking, but they're also putting the money where their mouth is, that they're now trying to make a stand and engage whistleblowers to work in the organization, and at the same time go for all those past executives and start charging them and suing them. And I think that's the way forward, because how else are we going to change the culture? Thank you. If I may, Penny's left the access, but she has put up here, she says the Durban-based independent ethics hotline that Cynthia just mentioned is called the Whistleblowers, and she also puts the whistleblower in there. So for those of you who ask the questions, and maybe you can also take it back to your organizations, that perhaps they need to look at the whistleblowing hotline to be independent of the organizations, and maybe use the local company, whistleblowing.co.za. Thank you.
Thanks, Cynthia. I was actually just going to mention that whistleblowing. I've seen that at the same time, so that's great. But you actually make a very valid point about EOH. I'm of the personal opinion that EOH has to be commended as a company that, first of all, did things very, very right. They then did things very, very wrong. And now they're doing things very, very, very right again. So, you know, to me, they're a great example of what companies should be doing. You know, companies who have, you know, recognized that they haven't been doing things correctly, and are making good on it. So I think EOH need to be recommended, you know, for that, commended for that, and acknowledge that what they're doing is not easy.
Indeed.
Yeah, I think we need to put it bluntly, we must change our mindset. A whistleblower is not a snitch. It's somebody who has at heart the health of the company and has the guts to express it. And that actually is the root of the problem, that people must understand what it means to be a whistleblower. Thanks.
Thanks, Patrice. Any other questions? Yeah.
Okay, so I don't see any other questions at the moment. So if there is nothing else, then I'm just going to thank you very, very much for your time this morning. I'm going to thank you on behalf of the whole country for what you have done. You know my views on what you have done, and please, everybody, go out and buy Cynthia's book. Please go and support her, and support Cynthia and everybody else, because I mean it's Cynthia. There are a number of other people who are doing great things in this regard. So please go and support, go and buy the book, and any way that you can help Cynthia or whistleblowers to change the trajectory of this country, because as Cynthia rightly says, we can't go to another country. I mean, I can go back to the UK. It's cold there. It's miserable there. I mean, I can put up with the weather in Joburg at the moment because I know in a couple of days' time it's going to be warm again and it's still sunny. So I don't want to go back to the UK. I want to stay here. But we as a society, we can't leave it all to the government. They've shown that they don't have the resources and the capability. So everybody's got to do their own bit. So Cynthia, thank you very much. Thank you to you all for being here today, and we will see you at the next Boardwalk and Leaders Walk. Yes, show your book. That's it. That's the one.
If I may just say something,
Please
I've
do.
undertaken to donate 10 Rand from every of my book sold. So remember, when your book is published, you only get a percentage. I'm getting 15% of my book sales, but which makes it 48 Rand. But 10 Rand of that, I'm going to donate to a whistleblowing fund. And so you can support me through buying the book, because definitely whatever I make from this book is going to be that first. I've decided if no one's going to put money into that whistleblowing fund, I'll put my money where my mouth is, and I'm definitely going to put funds into it. So thank you very much for the support. Thank you, Business Engage, for having me. And thank you to everyone who tuned in today. I'm appreciated very much.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy your day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Sorry, what I should have said is they could also order from me directly.
Yeah.
Can order. Malcolm, if they haven't gone, people can order directly from me as well. And I can courier it or drop it off. I'll just leave my cell number and my email address. There we go. Thank you, everyone.